Well, time to go on to, believe it or not, our last speaker, number 32, gone by, in my mind, very quickly. It's hard to imagine that we've already heard 31 speakers. Last, but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce Tod Machover, professor of music and media at the MIT Media Lab, where he's also director of the Hyperinstruments and Opera of the Future groups. Machover's operas, chamber music, and orchestral compositions have been performed worldwide by artists and groups such as Yo-Yo Ma, the Tokyo String Quartet, the Houston Opera, the Boston Lyric Opera, the LA Philharmonic, the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, and the San Francisco Symphony. One of his areas, hyperinstruments, musical instruments that are augmented by computer software. Been played by artists such as Prince and Peter Gabriel. Our friend Ray Kurzweil calls Machover the only person I am aware of who contributes on a world-class level to both the technology of music creation and to music itself. Tod has composed 5 operas. His Toy Symphony uses specially designed high-tech music toys. I hope he will talk a little bit about this, to introduce children to music creativity. And for all of our discussions about genetics in the last couple of days, I don't want to read too much into this, but you might want to know that Tod's mother is a pianist and music teacher. His father is an expert in computer graphics. Tod Machover.
Thanks very much. I'll wake up my computer here. So 32, I didn't know the number. Beethoven wrote 32 piano sonatas, but I don't think anybody ever sat over 2 days to listen to them all in one go. That's what this... Actually, my computer is not... it's been sitting here since the break. Most important thing is to make sure this comes back. Let's see. The last one. And maybe somebody could come and... let's see, I bet... Here I go. Somebody took the plug out. Very clever. Let's see. It's completely dead. Oh, there's an image there. Well, that's clever. Okay, that'll sort of do. Let's see. That means I've got to look. There's nothing on my screen. Okay, that'll be all right. So, the last speaker, I'm sure just what you want at this point is a whole lot of new information. It's amazing to see anybody still in the room, but I will run through quickly some of the things that I'm interested in. I just want to concentrate on a few ideas. One is an idea that's come up a few times, and actually John Palfrey mentioned it in his talk. Maybe my biggest passion over this last period is how to create environments and tools so that the kind of creativity and imagination and brilliance that we've seen in these 2 days and that are represented in this room are not just for special people like all of us, but are part of everyone's everyday life. And the gap that we have between the smartest people and everybody else is something that we have to change. So that's something that I'm deeply committed to. I think that music is a particularly good medium to allow people to think differently and work differently. Arthur Ganson mentioned that music does affect us deeply. It somehow unites our body and our minds. It probably uses more parts of our mind than any other activity. And it has features that are just beginning to be understood about relationship to our health and our growth and our well-being, which I'll talk about. And music is at a very strange period right now, actually. I guess the good news, and technology has a lot to do with this, is that there is music all around. With iPods and downloads, we can bring music to us at any moment. We have music when we drive, music when we eat, music when we entertain, music when we're in elevators. I was in Houston recently. Thank God Boston doesn't do this. I was in Houston, and they've put loudspeakers under all the sidewalks in downtown. So the whole downtown is like being in an elevator. And believe me, it's not the music you'd probably choose either. So music's everywhere. And, as you'd expect, there's a but. And the but is that the more music there is, people don't listen in the same way anymore. And this is true for music. I think it's true for a lot of things. The more we're surrounded with it, the more we devalue it, and the less we pay attention, which means that music's power and magic can't work to its full effect. So that's something that I've been very concerned with. And it's led me to a field which I call something like active music. What are the different ways that we can create environments, instruments, tools, music itself, that put people in the middle of it and let people who are not necessarily musicians manipulate that music, play with it, and become deeply committed and involved. And I've worked with this for virtuosi like Peter Gabriel and Prince and Yo-Yo Ma, for general music lovers who don't necessarily have any specific training, for children, and my interest in trying to reach everyone with direct musical experience seems to grow every time I do a project. There's another group that I didn't think of for the next project. So these hyper instruments, we started out by putting my sights on professional musicians, the top musicians. I'm a cellist myself. And in some way, how many of you remember Milli Vanilli? Who weren't from Boston, I'm proud to say. I don't think they were. Well, Milli Vanilli, in a way, inspired me to do this work that led to collaborating with, you never know where ideas come from. So Milli Vanilli was that group that won a Grammy Award. And then it turned out that not only were they going around the world lip-syncing, but they hadn't done anything on their album. They hadn't even shown up in the studio and recorded the tracks. Somebody else did that, and they were kind of the cover people. And that seemed like a watershed of technology allowing music to be made without any human beings in it, and no faces, and no people talking to each other and playing with each other, playing to each other. And so I thought that it was very important to find a way to take the power and the control and the richness that technology in a studio affords, but to put it back on stage and put it back in people's hands. So we've developed a whole series of instruments based on existing ones. This is a hypercello that we built for Yo-Yo Ma. Built a cello from scratch, measured the sound of the cello, measured many things about the body's relationship to the cello, hand on the fingerboard, bow on the strings, and used all that information so that the instrument itself has a sense of the interpretation, how it's being played, what the meaning of the music is. This allows the performer, by naturally interpreting the music, to change a single cello into a whole world of sound. So different uses, different notes that are emphasized, different ways phrases are played, allows the cello to grow into something more than a cello. This is just a little bit of Yo-Yo Ma playing this instrument with a piece of mine called Begin Again Again.
They premiered their piece, Begin Again Again, at Tanglewood.
This is what the Tanglewood audience looked like. So all of that layering of sound was all controlled by Yo-Yo just playing the cello part that I wrote from and interpreting it. And of course, what would be a natural thing to follow a hypercello project with? Well, the next thing I built was a chair. So turned out, another interesting thing about music projects is that they involve so many aspects of behavior, gesture, and emotion, and measuring subtle things, that you almost always discover things you didn't expect. So in measuring the bow, the best way to do it turned out to be to put 2 computer chips on either end of the bow, send electricity into the air, put a little antenna on the instrument, and to measure how much electricity from which side of the bow. Turned out to be a very inexpensive, reliable way of telling where the bow was, how fast it was moving, the angle, the pressure, everything. But it also turned out that when Yo-Yo's hand got close to the bow, the measurement went all wacky. We went back to the drawing board and found out that his body was actually absorbing electricity from the air. And we realized, all of a sudden a light bulb went off, and I realized that you could actually throw away the cello and throw away the bow, for that matter, and make a circuit where you could very, very subtly measure somebody's natural body movements. So that seemed to me to be a bridge between a virtuosic instrument for Yo-Yo Ma and an instrument for anybody to explore music by moving, by touching, by singing, by doing natural things. The first thing we built was a chair for Penn and Teller, the magicians. That's Penn sitting there. And that's a chair where you sit on the chair, your rear end touches a piece of metal, your body becomes part of an electric circuit, electricity goes in the air, and those two pillars in front of him measure the electricity, measure your movements and gestures, and turn it into music. So here's a very short clip of Penn playing this sensor chair.
Have developed high-tech instruments so advanced they're called hyperinstruments.
Told you it was short, but that's quite a fun instrument, actually. And from that, I decided to build a whole orchestra of instruments. So I wanted to make a big point that if you like music, if you like listening to music at all, it's such a more exciting activity if you get your hands in and experiment and make things and manipulate the music yourself. So we built about 10 different models of these instruments, made about 100 of them all together, and filled up a very large room with a kind of music arcade. It started out in Lincoln Center and then traveled around the world. A whole series of instruments, things like a gesture wall, which also measured your electricity as you controlled big masses of sound in front of a big wall. A rhythm tree, about 400 separate little rhythm instruments all networked together. Harmonic driving, where you could drive through a musical landscape, changing the piece depending on how you drove. That one I got to program, so if you drive like I drive, which is a very, always late, neurotic Boston driver, aggressive, the music sounds better and better the more aggressive you drive. It's a great thing about building these instruments. And the singing tree, on the other hand, was the opposite. Sang into a microphone, image changed, an accompaniment was generated according to whatever you sang, no instructions about what to sing. In that one, the more purely you sang, the more you sang almost like a meditation, like an oh, the more beautiful the music became. It all congealed, and you had to discover that for yourself. And a melody easel where you could improvise and manipulate music by just moving your finger. And we toured it around the world. We actually worked with the Vienna Philharmonic to build a whole museum in the center of Vienna, which still exists. I think it's the only hands-on museum for classical music in the world, where you can explore acoustics and the history of music and then make your own music on the top floor. And here's just a very short clip of what it feels like to be inside the Brain Opera. Now, about the time I was doing the Brain Opera, we had our first child. We have 10 and 6-year-old daughters. And I started looking for music training for our daughter, who was then about 4. And as the introduction said, my mom is a fantastic music teacher. I had wonderful music training. When I looked for the same kind of training for our daughter, we couldn't find any. And we saw that either the training was very exclusive. You had to start an instrument, which is very difficult and takes a long time to be able to do anything significant in music, or you can kind of bang on drums and run around and have fun for a few minutes but don't learn very much. And there really isn't that much in between. There's nothing really to exercise the imagination and to learn by having fun. So I thought it probably we should dive in and try to do something ourselves. So we made a 3-year project called Toy Symphony. The first idea was to make a whole new set of instruments. We called them music toys, which would open doors for creativity for kids, to make it fun to make music, but also to let kids have their fingers on sophisticated music making from the beginning. Let children create their own music. Think of any preschool in the world, and children explore the visual world, not by trying to copy the Mona Lisa, but by being given materials. You give a child a table and some crayons and paint and material to touch and things to glue and to cut, and a very broad project, and a child will discover the physical and visual world themselves. And in music, there's so many hurdles. You need to learn an instrument, you need to know the notation, you need to know the theory of music before you can do anything. And that just isn't right. Children should be able to make their own music from the very beginning. So we wanted to find a way to do that. We wanted to find a way to connect children so they could make music together and share music from all around the world. We wanted to set up a context where some of the best musicians in the world would collaborate with children to make things as equals, not as mentors to kids, but as different people trying to create something. And we wanted all of this to be focused on making concerts, make new work, put it on together so you could take a great orchestra, a great conductor, a great soloist, and children from a particular city, bring them together in an event that everybody would see and think was wonderful and inevitable. So to do this, we invented a variety of different instruments. I'll show you a few of them. The first are music shapers, which are, I wanted something that was squeezy. You know, music instruments are usually hard, brass, wood, vibrating. I wanted something that you could twist and was really fun to touch. So these are about the size of a grapefruit. They have fabric on the outside. We actually patented a technique that the thread has bits of metal in it and actually measures the electricity in your fingers. So by touching different parts of the embroidery, it actually knows where you're touching and how you're touching. And we use these mostly for younger children to squeeze and shape sound like this.
One of the new tools is the music shaper, a soft fabric ball embroidered with conductive thread. When children squeeze the shapers, a computer determines the position and pressure of each finger and emits a sound in response.
I think of it like being a flower seed and pouring water on it. As you squeeze it, it's like adding the water, and this little seed of music grows. And depending on how you manipulate it, you can make that sound grow in many different ways. Another instrument we invented were called beat bugs. These are rhythm instruments made out of clear plastic. They light up when you hit them. They have a little sensor on the back. When you hit them, it memorizes the rhythm you play. And then it has two little bendy antennas, and they measure how much you bend them. And one of them changes the rhythm. So if you tap in, it'll go down, 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 gong, 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 gong. And if you bend this, gong, 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 and it'll snap back when you let it go. And the other one does the same thing with the pitch and the color of the sound. So it might go, something like that. And they're also networked, which means we get 8 kids to play with them together. And it's like hot potato. You can hit your rhythm, and it'll jump out of your bug and go into someone else's bug. It'll light up, and then your job might be to make a variation of that, to react very quickly and then send it to someone else, or it might be to imitate it. So it's a very good way of teaching children to listen to each other, to learn about rhythm, to play in ensembles. And this is what the beat bugs look like.
Then there are the beat bugs. Rhythm by tapping on them.
And they're 2 little antennas that look like bug antennas, which allow you to change the rhythm that you've made, either change the rhythm or change the sound of it.
But the beat bugs are also networked. This means a child can create a rhythm and transmit it to someone else.
It's like a tug of war between your rhythm and that person's. You're manipulating each other's rhythms. It's a real experience, not only to learn how to play and listen to rhythms, but to train your musical memory and playing music in a group. So a couple of big kids there. That was actually designed for 6 children and 2 percussionists from the orchestra. In this case, which orchestra is that? I think it's the BBC Symphony in London. So it was a great collaboration. And then we invented something called HyperScore, which is probably my favorite of these. This is the tool that children use to compose. And we wanted something that children could compose visually using lines and color, but to compose in a significant, serious way so that you could have fun. You wouldn't have to know notation, but you could immediately make things and then refine them and make them just the way you wanted. I also wanted a tool where you could use this new kind of notation and then push a button and have the notation written out for professional musicians to play in real notation. So what we did around the world is ran workshops with HyperScore, and we still do this, and we help children compose with HyperScore. We usually train mentors in each city, and then we pick the best pieces in each city, which are then played by the orchestra on a concert with beat bugs and shapers and other commissioned pieces. And the basic way it works is you start out with a little window that has these things that look like eggplants, and you move those around and make melodies. It's very precise. You make them larger and smaller for longer and shorter notes, higher and lower as you move them up and down. But the magical thing is, once you make one of those motives, you assign it to a color, then you take something that looks like a crayon icon and draw with that color on the screen. And the software looks at the shape that you've drawn and does a variation on your music depending on the shape. And there are a couple of buttons which can allow you to select how much you want the computer to intervene or not. So if you want the computer to leave the music exactly the way you wrote it without trying to help it fit together, you can do that. But you can also have it help you fit together rhythmically or to fit together harmonically. So for instance, the blue line right in the middle of the screen is a harmony line. And by shaping that, you can see the color in the background. There's sort of bands of green, pink, and gray color. As you shape the harmonic line, it actually automatically generates changes in chords. And for instance, the pink change is a change towards a chord towards a major key. Green is towards a minor key. A gray region means that you're making a very big change called a modulation from one key to another. And by manipulating this line, just simply, you can make any harmonic language, any harmonic change you want, and of course, coordinate it with your music. So a finished piece might look like this. Another great thing about a tool like this is that it lets a child see the structure of an entire piece. You can zoom in and out. You can do a little detail or see an entire structure. And we find that with 7, 8, 9-year-old children, often who don't have, this is really designed for children who are wonderful and brilliant, but may not have any music in their family or in their school and wouldn't have any access to it. You find that you can discuss what makes a piece interesting, what makes a narrative, what keeps your interest, what creates a mood, as in the same kind of language that you would normally talk with a graduate student. It's really fantastic. So here's just a little bit of one of these pieces. This is also from the BBC Symphony. This is a girl, 9-year-old, who it was a very poor part of Glasgow. There's no music anywhere around. And not only did she write a great piece, but it was not at all what you would have expected from it. It wasn't tonal. It didn't sound like anything she might necessarily have heard. It was quite original and interesting. Well, that's just a view of what a workshop looks like, and here is this.
As children change the shape, length, colour and position of their lines, they create music. The software acts as a translator, taking the kids' designs and turning them into musical scores, the language of professional musicians. It all sounds impressive in theory. How does it sound in reality? The Toy Symphony has been a massive hit in Berlin, Dublin and Glasgow, with local children performing on stage with orchestras.
So they're the composers. So we're pushing this along. Actually, one of my dreams was that these toys, they're not toys at all, they're pretty sophisticated, but the toy companies might in fact be interested, and we might be able to get these new ideas out to a lot of people. And in fact, we've started producing these toys with companies like Fisher-Price and Mattel. The HyperScore that you just saw is just about to come out on a handheld that we've designed with Fisher-Price. It should be out by the end of the summer. And actually, we just put together a little business to push HyperScore ahead and won the MIT's 50K entrepreneurship competition a few weeks ago. And I was going to show you, another thing is that this kind of software is also possible to be used for serious, by a professional composer. So just this weekend, I wrote my first pieces, 3 piano pieces for using HyperScore that were premiered at the New Data Center at MIT. But I won't play you that right now. You have to, next year we can listen to that. We don't have the time. But I did just want to give one last idea, which is that the limits to how music can influence people and help people and is quite amazing. There's incredible research recently, some of you may know about a lot of this, that shows remarkable effects that music can have on people in very unusual circumstances. For instance, music seems to be the last thing that Alzheimer's patients respond to when they've lost everything else. So you can find somebody who has no memory of themselves, of you, a really very advanced case. And in almost every case, if you poke around, you can almost always find a piece of music that person will light up to. And if you look around a little more, you can find related music that the person will also respond to. And not only respond, but with that will come memories of that person's own life and other memories. And researchers are finding that there's a way of using music as a kind of lifeline to bring back large parts of people's personalities and memories who have Alzheimer's. Music is also being used, it's so close to many speech centers that a lot of people who have strokes and can't speak, but most people who have strokes and can't speak still form words, but there are any number of ways, places that the words can't get from here to here. And if you take somebody like that and have them sing a song that they know, can't speak a word, but they can sing the song perfectly with all the words in perfect diction. So then if you have them sing the same song and replace it with the words that they're trying to say, sure enough, they can sing those words too. And you can train somebody to make up melodies when they want to say something and learn to speak again. Same thing with movement. It's quite remarkable. So we've been starting to work in this area as in how music can have a direct effect on people's behavior, healing, mind, in all kinds of contexts. We did a big project this spring at Tewksbury State Hospital right here near Boston, where we worked with a group of mental health patients and physically disabled patients using a varied version of HyperScore. And the results have been incredibly encouraging in terms of people's interest in the project, the amazing work that people did, the change in people's behavior, the change in people's health, both physically and mentally. I thought I'd show you just a quick look at that to end. This is a little bit of what we did at Tewksbury. From the music therapist there. This is a guy named Dan who had no use of his arms or legs and couldn't speak, used an infrared sensor on his head to control HyperScore, and made one of the most amazing pieces. And we gave a big concert at Tewksbury on May 1st, and you'll hear now just a tiny snippet of Dan's piece played by orchestra. So in ending, I'd like to say that I think we're at the tip of the iceberg of a completely new period where music's effect on people and its power to move and inspire really can reach new levels. I personally think that there's a fusion that's possible between all the wonderful advances in the neurosciences that we've been learning about and music in particular, other arts as well, in terms of our understanding of how they work, and especially in terms of how we can use experience with the arts and activity in the arts to actually change the way our minds work and directly. I think one thing that will come out of this is the ability to actually fine-tune a particular piece of music so it's exactly right for you at a particular moment, either something that could be created for you or by you that would have exactly the right effect to change your mood, to change your thinking at a particular moment. And I think that the ability to truly invigorate music, to increase its ability to inspire, stimulate, teach, heal, and grow is right around the corner. I just wanted to end with a quote from Oliver Sacks, who, as you might know, is, besides being a neurologist, is a pianist, who said, "Music is no luxury but a necessity and may have a power beyond anything else to restore us to ourselves, to restore us to health, at least in the precious few minutes that it lasts." Thanks very much.